So right now I am looking at understanding better the 1950s and 1940s, the post-Holocaust time. My general interest is understanding how it was a period that very secluded SATMAR Hasidim were mingling with a much more colorful crowd than they would later. And that's why I wanted to ask you about your mother's marriage and your basic experience of what it was like at the time. So let's begin with first of all, when were you born in Berlin?
May 1930.
1930 in Berlin. And you came to New York in 1939?
1940.
1940. Ah.
The last vote, as they say.
The last vote, wow.
Beginning of 1940.
February 1st, 1940.
And your father was meanwhile in Hungary trying to get out.
In Belgium, in Belgium. Belgium was yet a free, neutral country. It was shortly after my father got there, it was overrun by Hitler, shortly after. But at the time he came back from, it's a long story, he came back from America to save my mother and myself.
But he wasn't able to do that.
It's very ironic. I'm just saying that very briefly, he went to America in 1937?
Yes.
He had a brother and sister in America. So he stayed there a year and a half, and he got the documents so that my mother survived and my grandmother survived. But he himself left America, went to Belgium. He thought they would be reunited and together go to America from Belgium. But Hitler invaded Belgium, and then he was stuck. He realized he couldn't get out. They wouldn't let him into America, and he basically realized he was trapped. And then he was deported to Drancy and killed Majdanek. He was in Sobibor. And my mother only found out how many years later, Mommy?
In 1995.
What happened to him?
Really?
But I think I talked about it when I was interviewed. And the thing is, he was stuck in Belgium and had to be deported to France and Drancy and Sobibor. And that's what the death camp, because he was born in Hungary. And Hungary had declared war on America, or America had declared war on Hungary.
They were part of the Axis.
So they didn't let anyone who was born in Hungary.
Even though he was Jewish, he was considered an enemy
Hungarian.
alien.
And your mother was Czechoslovakian.
Exactly.
Right.
And Czechoslovakia, they were still friendly with. So they let me and my mother. And I came on my mother's maiden name. I had to change my name. So
it's very ironic.
What was your name?
That they were saved, but he was killed. Yeah. What was your name, Mommy? Sorry.
My father, I was Friedman. Nelly Friedman. But then my mother's maiden name was Feuerlicht, so I was Nelly Feuerlicht, and that's on my immigration card when I have it. Yeah.
Because
and then everyone called, my mother got married to a Hasidic guy, and they thought I was Nigreshel, but I was really free.
You had a lot of names.
And then I got married, and I'm Grussgott.
But Grussgott stuck for a long time.
Surnames. Yeah.
Grussgott stuck. When did you get married? What year?
1949.
Wow. That is a long time. So
he was 18.
How old were you when you got
I was
married?
Also 18 when I got married. But it wasn't 1949 or what. Yeah. So
how's your son?
He's good. He's in school. Last year he was home the whole year. It was terrible. I actually have this space here, this fancy space. Usually I don't have headphones. This is all him because he went to school on the computer, and he's an only child. It was heartbreaking. It broke my heart. It was so painful. But this year they're in school. Everything is open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glad,
Yeah.
glad.
So your mother, let's go back to, you lived in the Lower East Side when you came in 1940.
Oh, then I changed. Once I was in America, I switched back to my family name, Friedman, Nelly Friedman.
But you came to the Lower East Side.
Yes. Is this what?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah.
asked. That's what I asked. Maybe move closer to the speaker, because the
move
tendency is
closer
to
in.
lean into where the
It
voice
has
is coming
nothing
from.
It doesn't have to do with the volume. I can't distinguish some vowels.
Oh,
That's the
Yeah, but I'll
problem
help you, Mommy.
with my
Yeah.
hearing.
So
Okay.
you were in the Lower East Side when you came.
Yes. Yes.
and you went to
The
public school?
slums. The slums.
Tenements.
Yeah, I lived in a tenement.
No heat.
Yeah. Bathtub in the kitchen.
Wow.
No bathroom except down the hall.
Oh, really?
With how many other families, Ma?
2 families. There were 2 toilets. I mean, it wasn't a bathroom, it was just a toilet.
In
And
Berlin?
the-
In
with
Berlin,
a pulley.
the
No,
pulling?
in the tenement.
I know.
In the
I was going to ask if in
Berlin-
Berlin, before you had to move out of your apartment because the war broke out, if you were middle classish.
We were middle classish. We had a telephone. We had a bathroom. We had everything in the house. We had a very
Wow.
nice apartment.
Wow.
And a nice apartment. Nice
Wow.
street. Yeah.
So you lived in the Lower East Side from what age to what age?
I was 10 years, well, I was 10. I came, I was 9 and 3/4, I would say exactly.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I lived on the Lower East Side. I moved out when I was 16.
You moved out of the Lower East Side.
Yes. Because
Why?
because my mother got married, and I knew right away.
You knew you'd have heat.
Not metaphorically heat.
When my mother, what?
You'd have
Yeah.
Not
physical heat.
metaphorically. You'd have hot water, you'd have heat.
Had other kind of heat.
How did
Emotionally.
your mother meet? So did you not live with a newly married couple? Did you live
They
with
were
them?
newly married couple, yes.
Yes.
You lived with them.
Yes.
But you didn't go to the wedding.
No. No.
Why?
Well, they just had a chuppah. They didn't.
Oh, you can't bring a daughter to the wedding. I mean, he was very Hasidic, ultra SATMAR.
How did your mother meet him?
No. He was a landsman. She knew him from her home Hasidic town, and he lost his family.
Did he have
He
a
had
wife?
a wife and a few children. How many
He
children did
was
he
a
have?
grandfather. He had 4
Children.
children.
And he was a
Which-
grandfather already.
Wow, he
How
was
old
older
was
than.
His whole family was wiped out. He was 50 at the time, 50 years old.
And how old was Bobby?
She was 46.
Oh, okay.
Maybe she was 47. He was 51.
Which town
And
was
he
he
was a
from?
big Talmid Chacham, so she looked up to him.
So
Uh-huh.
when we arrived, he came to visit us, and he inquired just before he knew what would happen after the war. This was during the war, when we thought my father was still alive, his family was still alive. Didn't know. He looked her up just to see if he could help her in any way, because he remembered her from he was a landsman.
Aha. He tried to help her find your father.
Not to find an apartment, just
No, to find your father. No,
no.
he looked her up because she was from the same town. It was a small
Gotcha.
town.
Ah.
But then later,
Well, after his family didn't contact him after the war, we had no contact. And it was already 6 months after. Anyone who survived got in touch with each other somehow. So we kind of knew that they were killed. And
But how did they get together?
well, he used to come visit from time to time because he lived alone and he had some stuff, and he asked our mother if she would keep it in our apartment or something like that. I don't know. They kept in touch here and there, but I wasn't aware of it.
And it was very difficult for you.
What year did
Say
they get
why?
married?
No, he was very. I didn't.
No, afterwards. What year was it, Mommy?
And I think 1946.
Uh-huh.
I was 16 when
Wow.
they got.
But
Yeah.
your mother shaved her hair.
She did?
Totally.
I don't know what I told you already.
We didn't talk about your.
My mother had blonde hair, curly blonde hair. She used to put it up in a, and I have pictures of her. She did not wear a shade.
In Germany, she didn't wear a sheitel because nobody did. She was always Orthodox, but not Hasidishly ultra-Orthodox. You went to vaudeville.
Yeah, we used to go to the theater, to the Yiddish.
So she was more modern. I mean, she was always very
German
religious.
Orthodox.
Orthodox, right, but not SATMAR. And
Yeah.
then she married someone who, was like the Chavrut of the SATMAR Rebbe.
I called him fanatic or whatever.
But he was also depressed because he had lost his wife and children. And my mother thinks that afterwards, when the younger, more attractive, wealthier women, survivors came to Williamsburg, he felt he could have done better.
Really? That is so sad.
It's just something
Okay. It was sad. It was not,
an aside.
That's an
Yeah.
aside, I see. But
They didn't, in the beginning, it was not very happy, and it was emotionally very hard for me. And my mother, I guess they discussed it. My mother was willing to go back to her roots, her Hasidic roots. She had become modern, but maybe she was feeling guilty all along because in Germany, there's no way that you could be religious, but not Hasidic. She couldn't wear a sheitel, and she was in business as well. So, but he told her that he would require this, and she was willing to. She wasn't vain. She shaved her head, bald. I got sick when I saw her.
why
really
did you see her head shaved? I shaved my head and no one saw my bald
He
head.
wanted her to wear a sheitel.
No, but why did you see it? How did you see it?
What do you mean?
How you saw her shaved head?
I used to help shave her hair.
Oh,
I did 2 years later.
She,
wow.
I mean,
she kept it up
really-
until she passed away.
it was a shock. I don't know who did it for her initially, but
Yeah, I'm surprised she kept it shaved all those years after he died.
she said it was itching if it started growing the hair. She was used to the shave.
She was used to it.
And she lived in Williamsburg, and everybody was very Hasidic there. So she kept on wearing the shade. She was really, I didn't know my mother had that she was so Hasidic until they got married. My mother went to the movies with me, and she did all kinds.
And Williamsburg was not that Hasidic then, right?
Not at all. They had a movie across on Lee Avenue. I used to go to the movies even at
Models?
Was it Model? I don't know the name of the
Lee
movie,
Theater?
but
Uh-huh.
it was on Lee and Hooper.
It's
And
now a
it became-
shul.
It became a Klausenberger shul.
Yes,
That was a movie.
that's the model.
And I
Yeah.
remember one of the movies I saw there, I used to cry. It was such a,
Which one?
it was with Joan Fontaine and Louis Jordan. And it was an unknown
A letter from an
letter
unknown
from an
woman.
unknown woman. I talked about it.
Yeah,
How
I
do
saw
you
it
know,
too.
Dina? Oh.
Because I saw it too as a tearjerker. Now you can see everything.
Oh.
And my mom loved those old movies.
Yeah, and I saw that. That was in Williamsburg. And they had two candy stores there. Do you know that? I guess
Plum?
you must have. employed, you must have interviewed other people that told you there were candy stores.
I know Flums.
Afterwards, they were boycotted, those candy stores, because they were open on Shabbos. So nobody, yeah.
Who
was
boycotted
alone.
them?
The Hasidim. It changed completely. It was unbelievable. And Williamsburg was modern. It was young Israel was there, and it looked nice. When we came from the east side to live in Williamsburg, I thought I was coming to the country. I saw a tree or two. And then they didn't have Keep Street. They had Keep Street.
Before the
built a
BQE.
And it ruined the neighborhood. It really, the way it looked, and it wasn't congested, and it wasn't that many. There were
People.
Gentiles living there too when we moved there in 1946. And the landlord over there kept the building spick and span. He used to scrub the stairs all the time, and walked in, it was like a dollhouse.
What's the address?
114 Lee Avenue.
Oh,
If you go
really?
by, do you know what?
It's really the heart of Williamsburg, the main street. My grandmother would look out the window
Between Hooper and Key.
and she'd see everybody walking by.
Yeah, Hooper Street.
Mel Brooks
there-
lived on 111. Do you know?
There was a who lived?
Mel Brooks. I didn't know that.
On 111, yeah.
On 111 Lee Avenue.
But a few years earlier.
It's a nice block. It's a
Yeah.
nice block.
In my years?
Earlier. Maybe 10 years
my
earlier.
age. No.
But he was younger when he lived there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I only lived there 2.5 years.
Until you got married.
Well, when we got married, we lived on the outskirts of Williamsburg.
That's Wallabout, Mommy?
Just for
What street was
about
that?
a year.
Was that Wallabout?
Wallabout Street.
Oh, you should tell her about how difficult it was to find an apartment and about why you left that apartment. It was a really funny story.
I want to hear it.
But he wanted to know how Williamsburg was. Okay.
Wallabout is Williamsburg.
Okay,
Wallabout is
Wallabout.
part of Williamsburg now, for sure.
Well, we got married. We first lived in Brownsville, and everybody, when we were engaged, everybody asked, "Well, when are you getting married? When we can find an apartment?" It was impossible. It was after the war. You couldn't find an apartment. I didn't want to live. I saw some basement apartments. I didn't want to live in a basement. So finally, we found something in Brownsville. Brownsville was a Jewish neighborhood. It's not, what is it now? It's bombed out. It's more, yeah.
It's mostly Black neighborhood now.
Yeah, well, it was kind of changing then a little bit. But we found, it was a Jewish neighborhood. We found on the 3rd floor, they renovated a little the apartment. It was like livable. But we was there for a week or so, and I made a kugel, and I put it on the blech, and we had some friends and invited them. And when we came back from Shul Shabbos, on top of the blech there were little holes in the kugel.
Rats.
The mites, I don't think
Mice, rats.
mice. I haven't said rats.
They
They were
burrowed
really
in
hungry.
there and had a meal.
On top of the blech.
Oh my God, they must have burned themselves getting to it.
And it was infested. I mean, there was like,
Yeah. So you moved out very fast after that.
and we paid they called it under the table. We paid $200 to get the apartment under the table, like a bribe. And we said, and we let the word be known that, we found an apartment on Wallabout Street. So we lived, I call it my honeymoon apartment. That was in Brownsville. 6 weeks we lived there. And
Wow.
somebody else took it, gave us $200.
And they lived with the mice
And
or
we
the
were
rats.
able to give it to someone. I don't know how they felt. We didn't tell them, but they took it. They went. I don't remember the details anymore. But after 6 weeks, we moved out because we found an apartment on Wallaby Street, 5 floors up, but not
Wow.
like little easy steps, like those old-fashioned, that even I was 19, till I got up on it was already not so easy. It was okay, we were young.
Yeah.
So, but I got pregnant,
Oy.
and
I mean, 5
So it-
stories. Yeah.
I think after 10 months living there or something like this, there was an apartment that we paid $35 for that apartment, a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. And then we got downstairs, it was nice and light and airy. That was nice about it. But we got an apartment, somebody moved out in the adjoining building on the 2nd floor. And it was kind of dark, a little dark, but it was the 2nd floor. So we moved. I'm always moving.
Till today. Well, you did have 50 years more, 60 years
Yeah. In
in the same
Flatbush,
house.
Midwood.
Anyway, so we moved down to that apartment. In the meantime, my husband, he was always asking, he was very friendly with everyone, very extroverted and outgoing. And he happened to know some rabbi in Flatbush on Ocean Avenue. He had a kahila. He needed members too. And he knew him from Tanahal, from Europe, my husband remembered. Anyway, he used to ask about, maybe you know an apartment available. So we lived downstairs maybe a month or 2. And somebody in that roof called us. The landlord wants only religious people, and he's recommending us if there's an apartment available in Flatbush on Ocean Avenue. So we went I fell in love with that apartment. It was also a walk up, the 2nd floor. And I said, it had 5 rooms. He wouldn't rent it to people who were not religious. People were living in apartments, 3-room with 3 children, kids sleeping in the living room. Here I was pregnant, you couldn't even see, and I'm moving into a 5-room apartment. And I said to my husband that we paid $35 for that. I told them, I said, this is $65. We can't afford it. How could we afford it? I mean, you're paying $35 and I got to pay $65. He says, never mind.
Well, that was my father. They always moved up,
Oh, really?
to better
Embrace
and
the
better.
next thing.
And he bought a house he came home and said, hi, I bought a house. My mom
Really?
was happy. Yeah, but
A year and a half later. So I was 21 and I owned a house and I lived.
And he was also an immigrant. He was also from war-torn, Hungary?
He was also from Czechoslovakia.
It's very, very interesting. I'll just tell you really fast. What's really funny about this, he's from the same town as my mother's mother. So that's also how he met. Now, it's a really strange story, but very interesting.
My stepfather.
My mother's stepfather, Moshe Nigreshel, he was my father's uncle through marriage. And when my father came after the war, he was in hiding in this town in Slovakia, Bardia. It's a beautiful town. If you look it up, it's worth looking just to see what a magnificent, beautiful medieval town it is with the square, Bardejov, Bardia. Really magnificent. It's a World Heritage Site. In any case, my father was in hiding during the war, and after the war, he came to find his uncle. And that's how he met my mom. So he lived with them. My mother went up to her aunt and uncle.
In Williamsburg on Lee Avenue.
In Williamsburg. And so he was like an older brother. He was 6 years older, and he brought light and joy, and he always joked around. He was
He was a
real character,
personality, an
a real
extroverted.
personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adventurous and fun-loving. He didn't feel sorry for himself, even though he had lost his whole family, his parents, his siblings. But he brought joy into that household. So
That swept you
Yeah.
off your feet.
And he was also a Hasidic background, but not anymore. He was religious because he lost his whole family.
but they had a lot in common. In other words, he was very close. His mother was best friends with my mother's mother. So they had a lot in common from Slovakia, from
Right.
Bardiev.
And we were distant relatives as well.
They're like third cousins or something.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So it's a real small town.
What do you mean when you say someone was Hasidic? Did they have a Rebbe in
No, I mean a pious and beard, nothing. I mean nothing like that. He was modern religious, like I used to be.
what about your stepfather? Was his name Mordechai?
Moshe.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Moshe, I forgot.
Moshe.
You're right. It's Moshe Nigreshel. He's got a
Moshe.
cousin Mordecai. That's
Yeah.
why I made that mistake. Moshe
Okay.
Nigreshel.
So your stepfather, he had the pious and the whole thing.
Long beard, yeah.
Here's a question I have. Did these, I'm trying to get a sense of what it was like for these survivors when they came. What was his attitude to America?
Well, he came early on and left his family in Europe because of poverty, not
So he-
because of, and he
Ah,
thought he would be going back.
Oh, he came before the war?
Oh, way before, 1937.
Oh, I didn't realize.
He didn't come.
And he moved to Williamsburg?
He was not a survivor.
Oh, I didn't know that. Moshe Nigreshel?
Did you see something here?
Oh, I didn't realize.
uh-huh.
So he lived there for quite a few years.
Yes, he was on
With-
his own.
Without his family, he thought he would bring them over.
Exactly. And he had a chance to bring them over, but he wouldn't want them to come over. It was a typhoon in Medina. You know what that means?
Yeah.
He wouldn't eat meat at all because there was no such thing as glab kosher. So he didn't have it.
And he would go to the farm to get Chalav Yisrael, to see the milk being from the farm.
Where was the farm?
He was so strict, and he had a lot of guilt feelings because he could have saved his family.
Survivor guilt.
Because he didn't want them to come, and then it was too late
Wow.
because
They all
It
stayed
wasn't-
there.
it wasn't religious enough. There were not that many Hasidim in 1945.
Who was he a chassid of?
Well, the SATMAR wasn't even here yet. He was Salem.
He was Salem.
I
Klosenberg?
guess what before Berkowitz.
No, it's Salem. Was he Salem?
Salem. He went to the Salem Rebbe. He was here also way before the war.
Uh-huh.
There was only the Salem Rebbe. The Baaldi, none of these rabbis were around.
But
when
who
he
was
came
his Rebbe in Europe?
in Europe? The Baaldi of a Rebbe.
Ah.
They had a Baaldi. The Baaldi of a Rebbe survived, and he did come after the war and lived in Williamsburg. So he went to afterwards. They knew each other well.
They were very connected to sons.
And when
To sons.
And when
I
the
see.
SATMAR came, he was also friendly with the SATMAR roof because he was a big Talmud Chochem, and
Uh-huh.
so he was ultra, and I found very condescending to women, very.
Like how?
Oh, women were so segregated. You know, afterwards, they tried to make Bedford Avenue was only the men walking, and Lee Avenue, the women could walk.
Really?
They didn't succeed in it, but that was
They
an
didn't
idea that
succeed.
they tried to do that.
But they did for a while.
They did?
I wouldn't go on Bedford Avenue when I came to visit.
Really?
You know, Nelly, a lot of people say that, oh, the Holocaust survivor generation of Hasidim were a lot more open-minded. What are your thoughts? They'd say,
Open-minded than who?
than today's black and white Hasidim. What do you think about that?
Do you think that those Holocaust survivor Hasidim
Yeah.
were more open-minded than today's Hasidim?
Oh, yeah. I think so. You mean then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Those who came
yeah.
after the war.
Oh, changed. Yes, the SATMAR Rov and the Klausenberger Rebbe, we went to him, my husband said, well, let him be Hasidic Kedushin, because he was new then. So he asked if I would, I said, I wear a sheitel. Yeah, I bought a sheitel. Why not? They were not bad looking, the sheitels. Am I going to shave my head? I said, no. I'm not going to be a Hasidic Kedushin. He wasn't. He refused to be.
But Frieda's asking you if the ones who came after the war were more modern, were more open-minded than the Hasidim today, who were not.
I don't know.
born in
You
Europe.
mean right now?
Yes, than the
Haven't
Hasidim
been
today.
there in many years. My mother passed away 30 years ago.
Wow.
But the ones
I
you
had
met,
nothing to do with Williamsburg anymore.
but Mommy, the ones you met who came after the war were ultra,
They were very
Hasidim.
hardcore.
very hardcore.
Some of them are still hardcore.
Oh yeah, yeah. Frieda's wondering if they're now more strict than they were then, even.
Maybe some of them are. Yeah, they're just as
The ones that I knew, the relatives that I knew who were Holocaust survivors who came,
very.
but there was a whole range. There were those who left everything and became non-religious,
They
not
didn't
Shomer
live in
Shabbos.
Williamsburg.
And the ones who came, you should tell about Roja, Ava, and Ellie. And Ella, my mother's first cousins, tell about them.
Yeah, they were so super from that it was.
Where did they come from?
Auschwitz.
They were Holocaust survivors, 3 sisters.
My grandfathers, my mother's father's 3 sisters. So they were from Hungary.
Okay, yes.
They settled in Williamsburg?
I came to a wedding once and I had a little bit showing over here.
Like a button unbuttoned
So
on top.
Button me up.
One moved to Square Town.
Yeah.
But I think it was a neurosis. And it was an actual, they were really crazy, basically, and using religion as part of it because they had so many mental health issues with their children afterwards and everything, because they were young women who survived Auschwitz. It was
Very traumatizing.
very, very traumatizing. But then a whole community of them together.
One of my cousins had a nervous breakdown, all because of this. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm asking.
From the same family, one of my cousins doesn't even light candles on Shabbat. Nothing. Doesn't believe in anything.
And is not in touch with the family at all.
Why? That was their response to the trauma.
Right.
She was one of 11 children, a sole survivor.
Oh.
There was a cousin, my first cousin.
So these traumatized, a lot of people will say, look, our grandmothers wore much more modern clothing. They wore short sleeves, and they'll say the Holocaust survivors were a lot more modern. But my impression from what I read is often that they were extremely zealous. They came out of the war very determined.
Yes.
What did they say? Why did you have to shave your head?
Oh, yes, the Klausenberger, he explained it to me. Because when you go to the mikveh, and if you have have hair, and you're not really clean, it's impossible.
Yeah, terrible.
To get the.
Yeah, they didn't tell you the truth that the head of those shtetls, the Gentile men would rape the brides the night before the wedding, and that was to protect the girls. At least that's some of the stories that they believe for
Yeah, I've
hundreds
heard
of
of
years in
that.
Europe.
He said that you had to, you might as well shave your head, because hours and hours of combing and the hair and not cleaning the mikvah.
Did most women shave their heads? Most women were okay with it?
My mother was fine with it. I couldn't do it. My mother, it broke my heart. I can't begin to tell. Everything changed when she got married. And the marriage wasn't that good, even when I was out of the house. But then everything was okay.
They sort of fell into a...
He realized that he needed my mother, and then he appreciated her. He didn't know,
I want to say something happy about Williamsburg. For me, we spent, I don't know, the first 20 years of my life, we went to Williamsburg every Purim and every Pesach.
That was
Really?
nice.
And yeah, even in Yerushalayim, whatever, there's no...
Which years?
I mean,
Which years were these?
Which years? The 60s and the 70s. Those 20 years. And they were great. I mean, they were great for kids. They were just wonderful. And I've never seen anything like that. I mean, Purim with the parades on the avenue. And I guess the people was like there one time they could really go wild. So they dressed up in these monkey suits and all night. And but we went around, getting money. We got Purim gelt, and my grandmother made great food.
And Pesach,
and she'd have, like 50 people come, and we'd have big, huge meals. And every Pesach, we got new clothes. And it was just that we were on the street a lot. And it was just really happy. And the boys were playing nuts, rolling nuts.
On Pesach.
Yeah, right.
They still do?
Oh yeah, kugelach. Yeah,
really?
Yeah. It's like marbles,
Right.
Yes,
that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. So there was something really nice about it, about the...
So you went to visit
Yontif.
your grandmother. That's what you went for.
I was married, and
Yes.
I brought her. And I came to, my mother was already a widow, and we came.
Yeah, every year Pesach, and every year Purim.
Yeah.
Where? Which street? Lee Avenue still?
On 114 Avenue. She kept that apartment until she died.
Wow. How did she feel? Which year did she die?
1991.
Wow. How did she feel about the changes?
What do you mean, living in Williamsburg?
Yeah, Williamsburg changed from when she moved there, 1946 to 1991.
She loved living in Williamsburg.
She loved it.
Everybody, she was very friendly. Everyone knew her. And some of the Holocaust survivors were our relatives, and she kept close with them. And she was cooking in the she was a cook in the Klausenberger yeshiva, and those boys appreciated her.
Yeah.
And when they also came from Europe, and as she got older, she used to sit on Lee Avenue in front of the house, and she loved seeing the people.
Just looking out the window.
Not look, just sat.
Oh, she would sit outside.
She would sit outside.
By the stoop.
And the boys who are now grandfathers came by all the time. Hello, Mrs. Nigreshel. One, but they were already grandfathers. They all remembered her cooking in the yeshiva. Yeah.
So she was, that place was made for her. She was not lonely.
And she loved
there.
it.
Yes.
She loved it. My mother would say, why don't you come move closer to us? Come to Borough Park, to Flatbush. It will be Weinen zwischen Jeden. I want to live
That's what she
among
said.
you.
Borough Park wasn't zwischen you.
Yeah, because Borough Park was a little modern. That's the one that's zwischen Jeden.
Wow.
You speak Yiddish, right? That's Yiddish. Ich habe nur geredet mit meiner Mama, Jiddisch. Und es ist schon 30 Jahre, als meine Mama ist nicht da. Und ich habe nicht mit keinem zu reden. Ich habe schon vergessen ein bisschen reden.
Except God von Avram, which we say.
Oh yeah? Matzah Shabbos, sagt man Gott von Avram?
Yeah,
Yes.
but it's a very long one, and you need a whole half hour for that. It's a very
Really?
different than one. Yeah,
Not a half hour.
it takes a long time, and it's the only Gad von Avram like this
Did
that
you
we've
say-
ever heard.
Did you say Gad von Avram?
Yeah. Gad van Abraham en van Yitzchak en van Yaakov. Vayidan liebvolk, dan volk Yisrael. Yeah.
Hitan liebra volk is. Let's
Van
say
allen
seven.
wijzen.
Gad van Avram van Yitzchak van Jacob. Hitan lieb volk is.
Sieben zu
survive
survive bekommen,
Zu
gesund,
gesehen,
zu
zu
leben,
lesen,
zu
zu
bruchen,
bruchen,
zu
zu
euchen, zu Kobe, zu Chaim, zu Chesed, Sieres Teufels und lange Liebe zu. Unser lieber Herr Gott hat viel vermocht. Unser lieber Herr Gott nimmt den Becher in der rechten Hand, macht der Bruche über den ganzen Land, macht der Bruche noch so heilig, noch so schein, als Kol Yisraels kinderlich so drauf, mein.
Soll uns wohl werden.
It
Als
goes
Meilach,
on.
Mashiach und David soll kommen, das heilige
How
Wohl.
come a
Gott
bechet? Do you do it with Abdullah?
Before Havdalah.
Uh-huh.
When the men go to shul for married, we do it. My daughter learned it too, even though she doesn't speak any Yiddish.
You speak
And
a
my
little
niece-
Yiddish.
Yeah, because I used to speak with my grandmother.
Ah.
I understand. I don't speak much anymore, but I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she could speak if she wants to.
And it's been a long time.
Yeah,
I
Nelly,
forgot.
medaf
I have-
met de
It's
tachtig
sad for me. I mean, I miss my mother as well, but I don't have anyone to speak. Nobody speaks Yiddish.
Yeah. Well, you're in Israel. You can, I mean, I'm sure there's more Yiddish there. Yiddish culture. Yeah, anyway, you're learning
to-
Hebrew, no? Are you learning
A
Hebrew?
little bit.
I
Are you learning Hebrew?
a little bit.
A little
I
bit.
understand more than I can speak, but
You have to come visit us here because it's a
Yeah.
really beautiful place where I live.
Yeah, where do you
Yeah.
live?
Really beautiful. It's called Mitzpeh Netofa. I don't know if you know Kibbutz Lavi. No, it's in the north. It's about 20 minutes from the Sea of Galilee, from the Kinneret.
Oh, I
It's
saw
a- it's a
out the window
community.
earlier. It looked like green out
Oh,
your
it's
window.
magnificent. It's really beautiful. We have like 250 families on a hilltop, and there are no cars on Shabbat. Everyone runs around. It's really a nice place. You have
So
to
it's
come see it. It's hard to.
It's a kibbutz.
It's a religious community, not a kibbutz, a community settlement.
Aha.
It's just a
Oh.
really nice, dynamic community. I mean, we started it 35 years ago, just 22 families.
And you moved there back then from New York.
Yes, basically. Yeah,
Wow.
that's another long interview.
Yeah, I imagine.
But when you can come and see it. It's a great
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. I don't know when we're even going to be traveling with all the insane restrictions on travel. But
Right.
yeah.
my children can't come visit me either.
No.
They would. No.
It's very complicated.
Quarantine 10
They would have
days.
come in the summer already. Israel is not allowing them in.
I remember when we interviewed you, it's stuck in my mind. We asked you what your husband would have said to all of the restrictions. And you said something like, you would say you live once.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what I said anymore. That's
That's how it is with interviews. You listen to it afterwards and you're surprised by what was discussed.
yeah, that's true.
So you want
Yes.
to, any other memories that you might have? Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you? Memories of Hasidic kids playing with non-Hasidic kids.
Oh, my children playing with.
No, generally
general.
in Williamsburg.
If I played.
No, in general, Hasidic kids in Williamsburg, like SATMAR kids, playing with or interacting with
My son
non-Hasidic.
was very good at interacting with the Hasidic kids.
When he'd come to visit. You think Ira, when he came to visit, would interact with them?
Well,
But
I'm
in
talking
general,
about
did
when,
Hasidic kids play with then in those days, when you were 16?
yeah.
Did Hasidic
Oh,
kids,
when
when
I
they
was-
came, did they play with non-Hasidic kids?
I know that later on, when I brought my kids for Pesach and for there was the Weinbergers, if you remember them, Dina. They lived upstairs, and they were Hasidic. And they got very friendly with my older. She's my youngest, Dina. Here.
But in the 1940s, let's say.
When I came 1945, there weren't that many Hasidic people around, not that many.
Uh-huh.
I had friends. I had friends from Beis Yaakov. I didn't know about kids interacting with each other at that time. But there were very few Hasidic people at that time.
You know, in the 70s, when I would visit on Pesach, I had a friend, at least one or two friends from the neighborhood. Yes, and we would talk and walk, but they said, we knew you were not from the area. And I said, how do you know? You know, I'm also dressed modestly, whatever. I didn't have seams on my stockings.
Oh, you had to have your seams.
Yeah, yeah. I wore
Williamsburg people can sniff out someone who isn't from there in a minute. There is always a tell.
Yes.
Yes.
And my English was too good. I didn't dumb it down.
I have cousins in Borough Park now, and they commented, "Bist nicht von Insular."
That's what they said. Die bist von Insular.
But they accept me anyway. I'm not from Insular. Yeah, and they didn't understand it at first, but then they found out that I was brought up in Berlin, and I had a different upbringing, which they didn't realize. They thought I was tearing away or something. So now they kind of understand and they accept me.
They're very tribal.
Moshe Nigreshel, just this as a funny aside about my grandmother always gave tzedakah to Meir Baal Hanes and Tiferet, all kinds of places. And anyone she got an envelope, she'd send $1. My father once sent an envelope and he got back $2. But Moshe Nigreshel is still getting mail asking. Now he died when I was a baby, 60. So it was 61 years ago. He died, but we're still getting mail asking for tzedakah from Moshe Nigreshel. With these tzedakah places, they'll find you even if you're on the moon.
Yeah, they're so good. Plus, he responded. So, what did he do? What did he do for a living?
Oh, my husband?
No, Moshe Nigreshel.
He tried being a farrier, lost everything. Then he was in Frankel's. Frankel had a butcher store across the street from us. I don't know if you know about the Frank or somebody took. Well, he bought that butcher store and he sold meat to the yeshivas on credit, and they could never pay him at the time. The yeshivas all went broke, and he went broke. So he got to be a collector. He didn't speak English, and he tried business 2 times and it went kaput. So he was a collector and he traveled to different places.
To collect charity. He never learned English?
Never, not a word.
Can you tell me any Americanisms he didn't like?
Well, I think he didn't approve of me.
When you davened, he was upset with you.
Yeah.
Meidlich tumanish.
Girls don't have to daven. You know, I'm from Beis Yaakov. I was going to Beis Yaakov at the time, and I knew to daven shacharis in the morning. And he saw me do. He said he proposed. You know, why are the women don't daven?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, this is so SATMAR. This is the attitude today, to this day. Very much that way.
I think that he tried to, like I didn't like him because I was comparing him to my father, what could have been my father. It hurt me. And the same was with him. I wasn't his Hasidic family.
Yeah.
But I want you to know, after I got married and after my children were born, it all turned around.
He changed.
How?
His attitude. I don't know. He just mellowed, and he loved my children, and he felt that.
And he loved your husband.
His
His nephew.
His nephew. It wasn't
And,
really his nephew.
And I had to send my
It
son.
was his nephew through marriage.
through marriage.
Not through, not a blood
Yeah.
relative. Yeah, his
His first wife was my father's aunt.
And your father was, your husband was able to work him. Like, did his personality help warm things up?
My husband got along with everyone. When he was with the Sephardi Jews, he became Sephardi.
Yeah, he was very versatile and he really knew how to get along, very
Even
charming.
When he was even with Goyim, they all loved it, clicked, yeah. And he
Wow.
was himself. He didn't have to put on airs or anything like that.
So let me jog your memory in one other way, and then I'm gonna let you go. Do you remember childhood games that you might have played with skipping rope or bouncing a ball? Anything in particular?
I loved jumping rope. Oh, I loved jumping rope.
And
I
jacks.
couldn't wait. I played jacks. Yes, yeah, played jacks.
What did you chant when you jumped rope?
Is that what I said at the interview also? I love jumping rope.
No, I don't think we
Oh,
talked about
What did you
it.
sing when you jumped rope?
Oh, my mother, your mother live across the way, 214 East Broadway. Every night they'd have a fight, and this is what they say. Nelly, Nelly, jump out. Stella, Stella, jump in. So
I love it.
on the mountain
Stands a lady, who she is,
I do not know. What she wants is gold
Gold
and
and
silver.
silver.
What she wants is a nice young man. So jump in.
Oh wait, it's what she wants is a nice young man.
Yes.
We sang it as kids, but this part we never
You
knew the
sang that
lyrics.
too?
Yeah, but it was all she wants is gold and silver. All she wants is a punch in the butt. You know, you didn't say those. It was some
No, it's got a nice young
incomprehensible.
man. What else did we sing? Down the Mississippi and
Where the boats go push.
where the boats go push, and we would, two of us jump rope and one push out. Yeah, I like jumping rope.
Miss Lucy. Miss Lucy had a baby.
Oh, yeah, that was already my daughter's time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was, Rivka knows that, my daughter.
What
Miss
other
Lucy.
ones?
Oh, what, songs?
Yeah, Miss Mary Mack. Did you do that?
No, my name is Anna, and
My husband's name.
it's Alice. Alan. We live in Alabama, and we sell apples.
And you bounced the ball.
Yes,
Under your leg.
under the leg.
Under your knee.
Yeah. What else do I remember? And we hopscotch. You know, we used to play hopscotch. When I think like that, I have to practice balancing. You know, on the exercise, and it's. Well, I remember playing hopscotch. We used to jump, no problem.
We were young.
Yeah. We used to have to skip on one leg over to the other box, pick up the whatever it was. Yeah, that was a lot.
But you did it with your leg. You pushed it, no? You pushed the stone.
I think we threw it,
Uh,
and then we'd have to hop up. That was a long time. Yeah, I was a kid. And I used to go on the bars. There were bars. Hoist myself up and swing.
tumble over.
Yeah.
Where did you play? In front of the house? In front of the tenements?
No, there was a Sheriff Street Park under the bridge, near the bridge.
On the Lower East Side?
On the Lower East Side. Yeah. So yeah, that was over there. I played Chinese checkers. Yeah.
And
Chinese
Shomer
jump rope?
Hadati? I'm sorry, Shomer Hadati, mommy, was that in Williamsburg?
No, Lower East
Oh, the
Side.
Lower East Side.
What's that?
on the Lower East Side, they had a Shomer Hadati when I was 16.
Later, it became B'nai Akiva.
Aha, I
We used
see.
to walk over the bridge, half hour over the bridge to the Lower East Side from Williamsburg. Do people still walk over the bridge?
Exercise, but Williamsburg is very different from Lower East Side. There isn't that community connection anymore.
Oh,
There's no connection. People walk from one to the other, but there's no Jewish community. The Williamsburg community in Williamsburg is SATMAR Hasidim, and the Lower East Side is part of everything so expensive in Manhattan.
oh wow. It's all changed now. And
Yeah. Come on a tour.
but I haven't been in Williamsburg now in years.
Yeah.
Come see the new
wouldn't believe it.
Williamsburg, which is
Yeah.
very different, they say. Yeah.
Well,
It's the most hip place. Everyone I meet says, oh, Brooklyn, Williamsburg, wow. And I spent so many years just trying to get away.
when I moved to Wallabout Street, that was considered the outskirts of Williamsburg. Nobody lived there. That was like a border. And now they're way beyond Wallabout, all the way into Bedford-Stuyvesant.
All the way into Bedford-Stuyvesant.
And the Black people are no longer living there?
Black people, Puerto Ricans, everyone was pushed out. It's
pushed out.
Everyone. Only Hasidim stayed. Hasidim and now very wealthy people. Some of the apartments in Williamsburg have helipads for helicopters.
No.
That's
really?
how, yeah.
Hell?
Yeah, that's how wealthy they are. That's amazing.
What's a helipad?
What's a helipad? They can take a helicopter to the roof.
It's crazy.
Not the barony of a roof, the actual roof.
The streets in the north side are immaculate, fancy shops, everything expensive. You wouldn't believe it. The waterfront is stunning, glistening.
We'll go back someday.
It's too much. It's too much.
I don't think so. I don't know if I don't know.
Yeah, you will, Ma.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, traveling is very hard now, but.
After Corona.
But you live in Flatbush. You don't.
I live in Flat. I cannot do either. Both parts of Williamsburg are too much for me.